forward to meeting with you the rest of the day and talking about what we do at GE Aviation. So, as it says up here, I'm our senior manager for our SelfService Data and Analytics program. I'm within our GE Aviation business. That's one of the many businesses in GE, primarily focused on jet engines. We're a company of about 44,000 folks. As mentioned before, we're very much an engineering type company, and we make both commercial and military jet engines and technologies. So one of the most common questions I get when I talk about my title, so the senior manager for self-service data and analytics, people ask, what does that mean? And I tell them, well, I basically made it up. But in reality, what I'll do today is try to explain to you all what does that role actually mean, how does it evolve, and how do we use that within our organization. So, like many large companies or firms, until about 2015, we were a business that operated in very much a, let's give IT something to go find format, go get us an Excel sheet, give it to us. We'll try that out. If it works, awesome. Let's put it in a PowerPoint, show it to some leadership, then repeat that over and over again for months and years ad nauseum. And when you're a large organization like this with a lot of important deadlines, products, I mean, we make jet engines, you want those to be safe, right? Usually. That's not a great way to work. So how do we bring that all together and really bring the business together to build true smart data analytics solutions across the business? Now, within our business, there's many different use cases and organizations, but some of our primary focuses include our engineering division. So these folks are really focused on how do I design a jet engine part more efficiently, do it better, improve better quality, make sure I'm really doing a high quality design. They're very complex machines, thousands of parts. It takes a lot of effort to do that, very smart aerospace engineers. Now we also have a supply chain. So if an engine takes thousands of parts, it's a very complex supply chain. Many folks from the supplier end, many different sources. You have multiple tiers within that supply chain. How do you coordinate that so you can have on-time delivery? Finance. Finance loves KPIs. They want to run the world using KPIs, using cash, understanding cash flow. So in my world, they're the king of the spreadsheets. And then the commercial group, which for us is really mostly our, I would say, data science or AI division. These folks really focus on how do I build a predictive model or algorithm that helps our customers? How can I improve the time on wing of aircraft, so I reduce the amount of time a airframer is landed within a field? How do I make sure parts are flying longer? Can I even correlate weather patterns against engine deteriorations around the world to better understand how those things should operate? So, kind of recognizing that we have all these disparate use cases across the business, recognizing that we can't run off of spreadsheets forever, about 4 or 5 years ago, we kicked off a data lake ecosystem. So how do we build a centralized data lake to allow for experimentation and creation of new analytics, new AI models, new dashboards, new everything data? And as that grew, we got to about 2016, and we decided to do a new initiative that's very much business-driven, which I think is really key to how you make this successful. And that initiative was called the Digital League. This is a cross-functional team within our business that includes folks from really all divisions. So all those aforementioned ones, plus HR, plus sourcing, plus really anybody in the business. No one could be outside of it. And what we did is we said, okay, it's great you have your day jobs. We're going to pull you all together and co-locate you in one spot and have you focus on really the key operations components of our companies. Now, how do we improve cash flow? How do I make sure that on-time delivery is always happening within our supply chain? How do I really go after the key indicators of how we drive our business? And by doing that, you break down the silos. There's no longer divisions just working within themselves. They're working across divisions. It all becomes about communication, collaboration, really working together. And it also drives us to a centralized infrastructure and approach, a way to how do you coordinate all this and make it effective so people can work together effectively. So, as mentioned, we were very much a Excel and Spotfire shop until about 2015. Kicked off the Digital League in 2016, then steps in the SelfService Data program that I lead. And the whole focus of this program is how do you enable all that cross-collaboration, all those tools, all that technology in order to coordinate it, to govern it, to empower people, to educate them, to really make them work in a new and a different way they never have before. How do you really focus on the smartest way to do things, a agreed upon approach to data, to outcomes, to really automation? We focused on that in 2017, primarily as a grassroots initiative, not a lot of executive buy-in. And we grew that grassroots initiative so much that by the time we got to 2018, all the executives wanted to do it. And even from there, we also grew our Digital League 2.0, which grew our digital league by about, I'd say, 200 to 300% in size. So, self-service data, I will apologize, these facts are from the beginning of this year. They have changed a little bit. So today, we actually have 2,400 users within our self-service ecosystem, all using across tools such as Alation, Dataiku, or Spotfire to do development of the whole analytics lifecycle. We produce published data sets, which are reusable data within our business. A good way to think about that is our data lake's about 200,000 plus tables. We take all that, work with the business to really bring that down to a core set of data, 150, 200 data sets that really represent business domains. Why does that matter? Well, you don't want 10 financial analysts going and building KPIs all of different data sets. How do you get them to work from the same spot so you're speaking the same language? And what's interesting is it's actually primarily a business-driven conversation. There is data engineering involved. It's not the primary reason you do it, though. We have 2,000 plus data products built in the organization. Everything from basic dashboard visualizations to neural networks to machine learning models, everything you can think of. And within Dataiku itself, at that time, we had about 218 automated projects. That's probably nearing 300 now. So one of the biggest things I hear when I talk to other organizations or come to events like this is that how do you make something like a self-service program stick? How do you make sure it's not a one-time thing, that people actually adopt it and use it? And really, there's a few ways to do that. Make sure you focus and you partner with the business, just something I'll touch on a bit more later. But you also make sure that you're focused from the ground up on enablement, on building the right programs for what people need, but also that's in a governed way that's not going to break the ecosystem. The worst thing you want to hear is, oh crap, you just broke this great technical product we're using to run the shop floor because someone ran a self-service model. You have to be really careful about those kind of things. So how do you make sure you kind of govern that delivery? And for us, that really focused on our self-service data team, as well as our database admin team, the folks who really manage the database day to day. So first and foremost, very people-centric. We do a lot of user enablement. We do training on a global scale. Trained about 1,000 folks last year, 1,600 or so this year, across 10 different sites across our entire globe. We also have extensive documentation, videos, every type of learning format that you can think of, and are very much a team that will have conversations with you any time with the help you need. Now we administer our environments. We're very conscientious of our architecture. We focus on how you distribute the architecture, how do you push down the processing appropriately, and how do you really monitor utilization and see where do you even need to grow, how do you evolve. We really look at, when we build new processes, they're not processes that maybe even came from industry. We talk to our customers, to our users, what would make your life easier? How can we make your life better? A very easy example is, most of my users don't know what a distribution key is, but it's pretty important how you run a data engineering program. What we do is we build a macro that automatically develops that for them. One click button in Dataiku, the distribution key is done. And we also make sure that there's a very smooth deployment of our products. So we have the concept of a POC to pilot to product to critical product. Think of it like a really big funnel, almost an innovation funnel. And your goal should be, how do you enable the business to build as many POCs as possible to meet their immediate needs, allow us to become pilots to get automated, then really monitor the success of those pilots to see, does this make sense for a business investment decision? So now we analyze everything that our user community builds automatically through our own tools and processes to figure out, hey, if there's 50 plus people a month using this, maybe we should actually put some funding behind and build a product out of it. So now you've enabled an innovation pipeline utilizing the intelligence of your business. And if we go to the database admin side, we make sure that the very most basic of data governance policies are followed. Access patterns are directly related to how people access the database otherwise. All integrated through our identity management system, all schema-based. We also make sure that naming conventions are very clear. Nothing's more confusing than having names that make no sense because you didn't bother to codify them at the beginning. We make sure that anything that's being deployed in self-service is being done in an appropriate way that won't break the ecosystem. So we automatically review what is the processing compute this will take to make sure it's not impacting other projects. And we also make sure that, hey, if you built this, has it been running for a year, or is anybody actually using it? If it's not, we'll automatically turn it off. No reason to run something no one's using. And then really, we also focus on support. So not just my team from a support end user perspective, how do I do this, but also just how do you really enable understanding of how data and databases work. So under the hood, we really lead a number of different technologies. From the database side today, we have Greenplum that we run in an on-premise environment. We also do Hortonworks and Hive in an AWS environment. We formerly call it X1, primarily for big data discovery and analytics creation. For design and deploying data products, whether they are data engineering or data science, machine learning, AI, et cetera, we use Dataiku to manage and do that development pipeline. We use Alation to really manage that overall data cataloging, so to really make that 200,000 table environment understandable to folks. What are the actual business terms that people need to know? How do they understand, hey, if I come in here and search on what spares, well, I can find the tables related to spares and quickly use that data. So we're really focused on the governance paradigm around that and making sure things are clear. We also built an in-house tool called Dashboard, kind of like a surfboard. We like to mess with the data lake theming. So we have data ponds, data estuaries, make up your name. And with something like Dashboard, we really look at the wing-to-wing process. There's many different technologies involved. How do we know how all those technologies are working together so if something does happen operationally, we can report on it? We also have Spotfire, which was more of a legacy tool for us at the time, but primarily what we focus on for data visualization within the organization today. We even do some automation of database functions as well as data ingestion. So one of the hardest things about a data lake ecosystem is how do I ensure that the data that's coming in is not sensitive data that we can't be sharing? Like PII is a great example. How do I ensure those processes make sense, how they scale? So previously we've been stuck on, we'll just go ask the ingestion team. They'll take 3 months for me to deliver this. It's gonna be very slow for me. What we've done now is automated that whole process with compliance checks to ensure that only safe data enters our data lake ecosystem and that a user can be empowered to do it themselves without intervention from IT. And then finally, as I already mentioned, we use published data to really build a common language across the business ecosystem and really drive those outcomes. So when we look at our product lifecycle and when folks do development, my biggest focus is how do I lower that gradient? How do I make it so it's so smooth and easy to get in this ecosystem that even if you want to say no, you really can't? How do we make it so it's that easy? And a lot of that comes down to appropriate access, so it's easy to get access. Click a couple buttons, make a request, I've got it. How do I ensure that data is tagged easily so I can find it? Now, any user who's got this and they get that access, they can build their project, they'll do it in the right way. We force all processing to our data lake ecosystem, so there's going to be no performance issues. We ensure that there won't be any overlap. We really make it so folks can design and use their creativity. The worst thing you want is, I want to design this, and I got to wait a week to get in order to get access. We'll be able to do that. And then once they really decide that they want to take something from that design state, from that POC state, they have a business value proposition, they've done the hard work, they want to make it a pilot, we've created really a one-click button macro within Dataiku. I click the button, move it to automation node in 30 seconds. Now the caveat is, we also use it as a checkpoint to drive governance. I want to make sure that what you're developing won't impact other users in the environment. And maybe you did set that distribution key right. I want to make sure that you've explained how your analytics working, that you've documented it. We have all those checks in that macro. So you can't automate your project, you can't run it at a higher level until you've followed those best practices and done it. It's very similar to test-driven development, but applied to data and analytics. And then once we finally push that, it's in production and everybody's running happy, and then we see, hey, this has become big enough that we need to put a focus team behind it in the organization. So for me, and having started this program and really seeing it from the ground up, I think data governance is such a huge key of how this whole ecosystem works. It was already mentioned earlier in the previous presentation. Without data governance, you will have chaos. You cannot control that chaos without making sure things are set up appropriately, or even sometimes taking away functionality to make sure things run the way you want them to. So the way we do that is many different ways, but a couple key examples. We use Alation primarily as that governance platform. Again, making sure everything's documented, making sure we're tracking sensitive data tagging, making sure that things are easy to find. I can't overstate how much that helps in terms of reducing complexity. We do rely on that same data security model. So if you can access it via a SQL client, like a PG admin or a dbeaver, then you can access it via Dataiku. We don't do any separate security policies. It keeps it simple. And then we really make sure that what we do, we purposely focus all that execution within a data lake, at least from an experimentation standpoint. I think it's fine when products get large enough and their own and you want to do separate architecture and infrastructure. But when you're looking at really trying to track what's going on, really governing it, understanding what people are doing so you can make smart decisions, centralizing that in one development environment really helps you control that and really make, I can see it, it's visible. We like to use the term spotlight IT. There's always been shadow IT in the past. I put in this ecosystem, I got a spotlight on it, I know what's happening now. Now I can make a decision as someone leading IT programs. And then finally, there's really 5 best practices that I think we would share with folks who are wanting to do this. So the smartest thing that we ever did is when we kicked off this program, we made their decisions based on a partnership with the business. It was never, IT says, thou shalt do that, now you're gonna do it. Because if I said that, it never would have made it past 6 weeks and no one would ever listen to me, and it probably would have been, I'd probably been thrown out the window. So what we did instead is we brought in all of our major functions in the business. We did what we call a design thinking POC, where we brought in folks from finance, supply chain, engineering, whoever would feel left out. They all came in, they all got trained in different technologies that we were evaluating. They got a month to trial those technologies, and then as a group we made a decision. Now, ultimately that decision led to tools like Dataiku, like Alation. But what's really cool about it is those same 40 folks became the biggest champions in the business. They go back to the business, to all corners of the globe, and now they are extensions of our team, helping drive the same message, helping drive governance, helping drive feedback. We did that in early 2017, and it hasn't stopped. There are folks who've continued to join our organization. We call them ambassadors that really help us from all corners of the globe in order to drive these initiatives, and it's a big part of how we're successful. I also believe education is critical. Now, there are many different ways that people learn. Me personally, I hate sitting in a classroom. I would much rather have the ability to read online, to watch videos, to do something with my hands. That's not the case for many people. So we build different avenues to learn. We create our own internal content that you can read, that you can research, that you can watch, but we also have global training that takes a week long. We actually have instructors walk you through it. We do train-the-trainer sessions so we can kind of grow that global footprint. We really make it so there's many different ways to get involved, even everything down to very foundational level videos just to say, what the heck even is this? What is a data lake? Why do I even care? Support's also critical. One of the biggest challenges I think we face culturally is that leading a program like this, I don't think you can stand behind normal ITIL operation principles. You can't say, hey, just give me a ticket and I'll do it. It builds such a divide that people don't want to work with you. So how do you make sure you're partnering, you're working together, everybody gets involved in it, and that you really drive more consensus and more of a help mentality where you're not hiding behind processes, but instead you're enabling. I think that's very key for us. I also really strongly believe that you can't just be a top-down or bottom-up, you need to be both. Now, we were very much bottom-up at the beginning, but when we got the top-down approach as well, it really made a difference in our organization. To me, I think you need to bring both worlds together and meet them in the middle, because the truth is, when you expect people to do self-service, to do this work, you're changing how they do their jobs. You're changing how they work, how they think. And you have to make sure they're involved in that process or they're not going to do it. At the same time, we all need budget to run our programs, to do things, so if executive management doesn't agree, you're probably not going to get very far. So kind of how do you bring those two things together? And then finally, I think branding is very important. You have to have a very consistent and solid brand that people will relate to, that when they hear that name, they know what you're talking about. A very easy example of this is, within our organization, I always call it SelfService Data. No matter what, very clear about how that brand is put together. Sometimes you hear the word self-service, you hear these different iterations, and what I've found is those same phrasings have been used in other parts of the organization now because they feel the branding around this. So I kind of tell people it's like our calling card. If it says self-service data, not just self-service, not no enablement, all these different things, that means it's coming from us more officially. And I think that matters because one, people believe they get behind it, they want to get behind that vision, they want to feel that quality. It's not any different than running a small company or a product. You need to really protect that brand and make sure people can trust it and believe in it. So I'm a big fan of making sure you do that. And with that, looks like we got about 1 minute and 30 seconds, so I'll take any questions if we're allowed to do that. Otherwise, we'll move on. Yeah, thanks. Cheers.